Due to the graphic nature of its content, listener discretion is advised.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea.
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, you have Bennett and Mike from the Cigars and Sea Stories team sitting down with Eddie Lazzari from Change Your POV blog and podcast. Eddie is a 10-year combat veteran in the Army, non-commissioned officer, small business owner, leader, entrepreneur, mentor, and coach, and helps people learn how to change their perspective, change their POV. How you doing, Eddie?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Bennett and Mike, for having me on your show. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's great to hear from you, man. This is great. Tell us about Change Your POV. What brought you into that after a 10-year stint in the Army?
Yeah, so, I got out of the Army and, got into my own business. I did well for myself, struggled tremendously along the way. Put myself through college, night school, took full advantage of my Montgomery GI Bill. Thank you, Uncle Sam. And, I found myself doing a lot of mentorship and coaching when I ended up working at a defense contracting company. And I was coaching we had what was called a wounded, what they called a WIP program, WIP, a Wounded Integration Program that the company had started. And we were bringing in some veterans, wounded veterans out of Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was a new program that the company had started. Nobody really knew kind of how it was going to work or, what type of positions we were going to try to put them in. And I was asked to kind of come on board as essentially like a liaison, kind of an advisor to the management team, because I was, I served in Iraq. I'm a veteran. And so there was a lot of questions that people had in the corporate world around, PTSD and, silly things all the way down to, wheelchair accessibility. I'm like, that's something you guys probably should have been thinking about long before you were going to hire veterans.
Right.
But that's, people were unaware of PTSD, or they were scared about it because it was just, everybody heard horror stories in the news about it, and no one really knew or understood the implications of it. And the fact that we worked in a defense contracting company meant that there was, security clearances were needed, and people like, well, can these guys that are suffering from PTSD hold a security clearance? I'm like, people misinterpret PTSD with just losing your mind and being, I don't even know what, but there's just a
shock.
Shell shock. Yeah, so there's just a huge misrepresentation of what it is. And so part of my job in that role was to kind of just help educate people and let them understand that, PTSD comes in so many different forms, shapes, and sizes, and it's very unique to every individual. And just that education piece, I think, was kind of my greatest asset to that company. And then when the guys started to come in, I started to look at kind of their resumes and talk to them through the different interviewing process. And what I came to realize is, and I wasn't surprised by it because I suffered from it as well, and that is the military did a very poor job of helping folks transition out of the military in terms of, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of services that the military has stood up to kind of help close that gap. However, when I was transitioning out in 2005, I went to one of those, I don't know what it was called then, a resume creation workshop or something. And it was a bunch of civilian folks that were tasked with helping, military guys draft a resume that they could, I guess, potentially use in the workforce. Unfortunately, those resumes were shitty, to say nothing good about them.
Right.
If I was gonna apply to a combat MOS job when I got out of the military, I guess it would have been fine. But they were using acronyms and jargon that were still very militaristic, and of course at the time I didn't know any better, and I'm like, oh wow, this is great. And then I used that resume to kick around at some commercial jobs, and nobody even wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. They're like, this, I don't know what skills this guy has, but from the sounds of his resume, there's nothing we can leverage here. And it wasn't until after I actually, fought and clawed my way into a job and I started working my way up. I ended up as a manufacturing supervisor. So I was doing a lot of interviewing myself and reviewing resumes and things. And I started to really understand what corporate America looks for in resumes and what they look for in interviews. I realized that the military men and women getting out just are not provided the correct guidance and direction in that regard. And I found myself doing a lot of helping my buddies with the resume, coaching them over the phone, with interviews. And somebody finally said, wow, you got to find a way to bottle this, I think is the way it was put. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you could really, find a way to get your message out to help more people, because this has just been great. And it forced me to start thinking about it, right? And I talked to Bennett, and one of his mantras is, you can't be sad if you're getting involved and if you're helping out. And I started to think, what can I do to help more veterans? Because I've got a very close-knit group of veterans in my community, and folks I went to school with and guys that I served with, but the community is much larger than that. And I wanted to figure out a way, how could I get out there and reach those in a much broader scale? So I thought of, and it was a very long answer to your question, but so I thought of this blog, and I used Change Your POV because one's point of view is so tremendously important. It's about self-awareness, being able and being open-minded about looking at things differently. It's critical because when you're getting out of the military and you've got that military mindset, you have to be open to a different way of thinking in terms of corporate America. You have to be open to different approaches when you're dealing with counseling. If you're a supervisor, counseling corporate civilians than you were counseling your soldier if you were an NCO, for example. And just there's so many parallels to changing your perspective or changing your POV that was kind of my mantra, right? Change your perspective, because it will open up doors of opportunity. If you keep in one mindset that I'm a military, combat veteran, and I'm going to attack everything that way, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities that would otherwise probably present themselves to you.
Yeah. No, that's very good wisdom and advice. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny that you should bring it up that way, because I'm very much so an operational guy, and yet at the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm a spiritual guy. So,
right.
I'm not religious in a sense, but I like looking at the world from that, oh man, I wonder what those shoes are like. Let's take them for a mile and maybe do a little apathy test here.
Yeah, man.
Which I it sounds funny, but that's one of the things that I love about, like reading Hemingway. You can sit down and read an Ernest Hemingway short story and it feels like you lived a lifetime, because he concentrates so much dosage-wise into it. And that's the way that a lot of us as veterans have our experiences. We have stamped and gone through a concentrated dosage of, drink from a fire hose, learn all of this training, get into the mindset. You're yutting and shutting down range. Okay, you're a civilian now. What? Like, whoa.
Here's 9 days of classes. Fucking here you go.
Yeah.
All right.
We spend a year to train you to kill motherfuckers, but now we got 9 days. Get to class. Shut the fuck up. Get to class. And now you're a civilian.
Yep.
Well, and it's almost like, it's funny because we went to entrepreneurship boot camp for veterans, and I joke around, half-heartedly joke around. I'm like, dude, the military, they told me that they were going to send me to boot camp. They're going to turn me into a killer. I was going to be a Marine. This is going to be awesome. They never told me that they were going to turn me back into a civilian.
Right.
So I'm looking around for another boot camp that's out there for like civilian boot camp.
Yeah.
Just what do I got to do? You're not
how
gonna
the fuck do I do this shit?
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna powder your ass. You can work 9 to 5. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, it would be the most back-ass words of boot camp you could ever think of. Okay, Marine, you've got to slow down. You got to slow the fuck down, man. You're going
Right.
too fast. Mile a minute.
And that was one of the things when I started in the corporate world.
Oh, yeah.
I naively was looking around like, okay, so who's going to be my mentor? Like, who am I going to get my monthly counseling from? Like, who's going to let me know what I'm doing, how well I'm doing it, what I need to do to shift or change or do this better?
Yeah.
You know, who's going to give me candid feedback? You know, everything that I got in the military, I naively was expecting when I got into the corporate world. And what I found was that just didn't exist.
Ugh.
I would talk to my manager. You know, I would sit down with my manager for our, you know, semi-annual review at the 6-month mark, and then I would sit down with him again at our year-end review. So I basically would sit down and talk about my performance twice a year. You know what I mean? And I was just like, what the hell is this all about? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I want candid feedback. I want to be able to grow, develop, learn. You know, if I'm doing something wrong, I would rather I know about it now than wait 6 months to hear about it on a review. And I just was beside myself that corporate America didn't have a structured, you know, call it a mentorship type of thing. And when I was, you know, when a lot of these wounded warriors were entering the program, that was a lot of kind of what they were looking for too, is that real-time coaching, mentorship, feedback, training that they were getting in the military, and it just doesn't exist in corporate America. So that was something that I wanted to help try to change that. I wanted to help change the veterans' mindset that, you know what, that's not going to necessarily exist in the corporate world, so you've got to figure out a way to get that somewhere else. And you can find that somewhere else through different organizations like the EBV, or even, you know, Facebook groups, or mastermind groups, or other type of military type groups. But if you're going to go into the corporate world, don't expect that you're going to have somebody thinking about your best interests at their, you know, on their heart. You know what I mean?
See, Eddie's another one of these guys that, even though you have your MBA, right? But you're one of these guys too that doesn't necessarily believe that education is the end all be all by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, no.
That guys getting out, especially combat arms guys, just give yourself a little credit. You don't have to go to school to do what we're doing, or to do the other stuff. Eddie just happened to go that route, and I happened to go that route. But Mike, he started to go that route, and then he's like, fuck this. This is bullshit.
Well,
I can do this on my own. I mean, it's how much have you found that your education helped you, get where you're at?
Yeah, so unfortunately, and I hate that it's this way, but I guess it is it must be a good reason. For a lot of positions, a lot of companies out there, it is about, you know, the sheepskin on your wall, right? It is about that, and it shouldn't be, but unfortunately it is. And I've met many, you know, newly graduated college, you know, folks come into the corporate world, and they've got absolutely no leadership skills, training skills, but yet they've got that degree, so they must have everything that is required to be a successful businessman or woman, and that's just not the case. But then again, you got these military veterans that they don't have, like me. And I spent 10 years in the Army, and I came in as a private, and I made E5 in 2 years, 5 months. So, you know, better part of 8 years of my life was spent as a non-commissioned officer leading and training soldiers, you know, and that just became part of who I am. And I came out of the military and into this corporate job with far more experience as a leader, supervisor, than most supervisors did in the company. So it's just a matter of being able to convey that message with your resume. And a lot of people think, you know, the resume is kind of old school. It's, you know, it doesn't really matter or mean much these days because there's a lot of social media, online things, LinkedIn, things like that. And I get that. That is very important to have your, you know, online presence and, you know, networking on LinkedIn and things like that. But still to this day, the resume is still the de facto form of communicate, or at least starting the process of new hire. All companies are going to collect resumes. They're going to use those resumes as a measuring stick against other potential candidates for that particular role. And so it's important for those that are getting out of the military to understand the importance of that resume and be able to convey your military skill set in civilian terminology. Let's call it that. And I don't care what rank you were, how long you were in. You have marketable skills that companies are looking for that you could use to leverage and have a leg up on other candidates applying for that same position. You just
with or without the education.
Absolutely, with or without the education.
That's exactly where I was going with this, because you push. You and I have talked extensively about this stuff, and that the resume. I mean, we push entrepreneurship at Cigars and Sea Stories like it's like it's the only thing available, basically.
Yeah.
Because that's just our mind frame.
Yeah.
But we also know, especially with married guys, and I say this to our listenership, the guys that are getting out and stuff, that we understand guys with families and stuff. Sometimes you got to have that job before you can venture on to do, because you have to provide stability for your family.
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to show, and it's something that we've not really ever talked about on the show, is the resume, and how important it is, and to make it look like a civilian resume, even though you're coming out of the military.
Right.
Because people don't get it. People don't understand it. It's one more thing that civilians don't get about the military. They don't understand the jargon.
Right.
And you've proven that you actually know how to guide people down that road and get a good resume out there. So I was hoping that you would go into this when I brought it up.
So I don't know about the Marine Corps, but the Army, when you become an NCO, they dish out what's called NCO additional duties. I don't know if the Marine Corps has something similar, but it's basically, once you're a non-commissioned officer in the Army, there are additional duties that have to be done that are kind of divvied out to different NCOs. Like, for example, one of my additional duties when I was in Korea, I was the guy in charge of the entire battalion. So we're talking, over in Korea, everybody lives in Korea. They live in barracks. And within my battalion, there was 18 buildings that everybody lived in. Buildings meaning barracks that people lived in, the dining facility, the head shed where the sergeant major and commander lived or worked. But there was a position that needed to be filled that was divvied out to me, and I was the Battalion Energy Conservation NCO. So what does that mean?
Holy Christ!
I was responsible for 18 buildings. I had to go through and make sure that all of the light bulbs were working. I had to convert all of the old style fluorescent bulbs to the new style energy conservation bulbs right throughout the entire battalion. I had to actually keep the books on the amount of money that we were spending on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, annual basis for energy purposes, all the way down to air conditioning in the summertime. So I had to keep a lot of records and a lot of logs, and I was responsible for a lot. And so that's just one example of an additional duty that you may end up with as a non-commissioned officer that's hugely transferable into the commercial or the civilian sector. For example, you add up the number of buildings, how much the energy was before I started, and how much I was able to conserve over time. So I ended up saving the battalion, 30% in energy costs over a 12-month period, for example. And I just started to list out all of the things that I was able to do in that position. And you start to write bullet statements around that on your resume, and all of a sudden the potential employer isn't reading about a guy in the military that's shooting bullets downrange, even though I was combat arms and that was my job. They're hearing about somebody that was responsible for multi-millions of dollars worth of equipment and hardware and buildings and infrastructure, that was responsible for keeping a log, tracking things, had conservation in mind and was measured to some type of a specific goal. Another additional duty that I had when I was at Fort Hood, Texas, was I was the battalion master driver. So I was responsible for actually taking everybody within my battalion out and testing them for their vehicle licenses, from Humvees to LMTVs to I mean, hell, we even had to license people for generators and things like that. It's ridiculous. But so I was responsible for keeping all the records and issuing all the licenses for everybody. And so I had to develop the training program for each of these tests, both written and hands-on for the actual driving event. So, I mean, you start to take all those little things, and if you're listening to this right now, and you're in the military, and you're thinking, oh, I've got an additional duty, or I'm, responsible for this. Yeah. Loadout, combat loadout. If you're responsible for taking your platoon or your section, to not the National Training Center, for example, or maybe to Afghanistan or Iraq for a deployment, and you're responsible for loading out and all the documentation relative to loading out the Connex and all of the sensitive items and putting vehicles on the railhead. And I mean, there are so many things that you do in the military that you just don't consider as transferable into in the corporate world. And there are so many things that are. And that's kind of my goal, is to help people kind of sift through that and see those things that are transferable and communicate that into language that corporate America will understand.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people misinterpret the fact of like, oh, okay, you're not going to do it the traditional sense, so that means that you're not going to do it. You know what I mean? Just in the essence of you haven't chosen formal higher education in order to go that route, and so you're just not going to do it. As if you get to circumnavigate all of these other different things. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, you need a resume, even more so.
Right.
In my opinion, you need a resume even more so than going in for the job, because you've got to figure out how to sell yourself. You're going to have the 2-minute elevator pitch wherever you go. I mean, people are going to be like, hey, man, can you actually hang? Are you coming to this party with something to offer, or are you just some joker who decided to drop out of school? Or are you an MBA who has rigidly held to the stereotypical like processes, structure of business? Are you there to execute? That's fine. That's totally cool. There's a niche for that as well. But I think that your typical modern day, what we would assume employee with a living document of a resume and transferable skills, is probably looking for something a little bit more agile than, not to frown on CPAs, but those guys count a lot of numbers and handle the books and do all sorts of stuff. It's not my bag. I'd rather go out and shake hands and talk with folks and get outside the building and stuff like that. And that's some of the other transferable skills right there.
Right.
Like, I was a section leader overseas, and one of the things that was necessary was dealing with other leadership underneath of going and filing official reports and formal reports and things of that nature. It's basically willing to deal with motor T in order to get things done.
Yeah.
But what it is it's managerial collaboration at a lower level in order to ensure mission success.
Sure.
And when people understand that you have the ability to delegate and maintain an overall authority of your little piece of the pie, and leadership comes down to like look over your shoulder and you're almost indignant because of it, you're resentful. You're like, hey, what are you doing looking at my guys? Because that's how I was.
Yeah.
I mean, if First Sergeant came around, I wanted to know why. I wanted to know why he was looking at my guys, what evaluation we were about to go through. Yep. Why are you looking at my guys like that? Whoa, man, I'm just checking out. Nope, those are my guys. Like, what's wrong? Where are we going? Do you have something to kill? Can we, what? Let's do this, And it's like, whoa. But you can't always be the break glass in case of war guy.
Yeah.
You've got to have,
Those are the guys from the 101st Airborne.
There you go, yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize is, when we're called to the I call it the show, right? When we get the deployment orders and we end up in the big sandbox and, it's a two-way firing range, we execute and we do that job very well. But the amount of time that military people spend when they're not engaging with the enemy, you're spent doing everything that's transferable in the corporate world. Everything from just coordinating the firing range and humping your section down to the firing range and coordinating chow for them to eat and water and, a medic to be down there to service any injuries and doing police call and picking up the brass when it's all, it sounds silly and everybody's like, what? But the fact of the matter is, that's a project. Well, part that Bennett may not know is I've got my MBA with a graduate certificate in project management. So I understand project management really well. And everything you do, now that I have that education and I know and I understand project management, I can use that. And I look back on all these examples in the military, and I'm like, that's a project, that's a project, that's a project. And the simplest thing is a project. And if you're a non-commissioned officer or a leader and you're responsible for the training and development of your men or women or whatever the case may be, you've essentially are a project manager, and you've got the skill sets. You may not understand the language of project management, but understanding a language is easy enough. Not everybody understood the phonetic alphabet when they first joined the military, but I bet you everybody that's out now could, even to this day, be able to go through the alphabet phonetically. Yeah. So that's a teachable, learnable skill. It's just you need somebody to kind of point out the things that you've done and be able to say, by you doing this, you've just demonstrated what this company is looking for in X. And that is a piece that I believe is missing. You can help somebody write a resume, but until you really, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike, when you said, when you go into these conversations, what do you have to offer? And that's so important, because so often people write the resume because they want to highlight everything that they've done. Look at me, right? The most effective resume is written for the listener, because communication is done by the listener. That listener it could be a number of people. That listener could be the recruiter, it could be the hiring manager, it could be the human resources representative, whomever, right? But whoever's looking at your resume, that's the person that you need to be communicating to. So if you're writing your resume as kind of a laundry list of look at me and look at all the great things that I've done, you're not going to get very far with regard to moving on to that next level, right?
Right.
If you're writing that resume with the interest of, let me communicate to the listener what value proposition I offer to that particular role or position, then you're writing a resume that's going to resonate with the reader, and someone's going to read that and say, wow, look what this person can bring to the table if we hired them. Does that make sense?
That's a really good point, is that tailoring your resume to tell them what you can do for them.
Right.
Because way too many guys, and especially when egos get involved, especially with, type A personalities that riddle the military, it's all about look at me, look at me, look at me, look what I've done, look at what I've accomplished. But it's all about, if you want to get that job, and good jobs, show them what you can do for them. And I think you bring up a good point too, is especially with the project management. How many times, and this kind of segues because of course we have to go to the entrepreneurial side.
Sure.
Project management can be done exclusively by 1099 contractors. That's one of the things that Michael always pushes forward, is that just because if you want to be an entrepreneur doesn't mean that you have to start your own company per se, but you can work as an independent contractor for established companies. And you find more and more and more nowadays project management being one of those key facets that is contracted out a lot of times.
Sure. Yeah, and to your point, some of the most successful entrepreneurs I know, myself included, and now I'll put myself in the category of successful, because to me success isn't a direct correlation of income or money. I mean, that's an
do we say that?
It's an indicator, right? It's an indicator. So to me, financial success in terms of money, it's only relevant because it means you get to keep doing business. That's it. And it isn't a successful measure in terms of I am now successful because I have X in the bank. That's not it at all. But some of the best entrepreneurs, myself included, are doing so as a side gig. They're employed full time. They got a 9-to-5 or whatever, and they're doing what they want to be doing, their passion, on the side with the intention they'll be able to turn that into like a full-time gig. Because I started my own business right out of the Army, and I did well. My first year in business, I grossed $100,000. Of course, by the time you start taking out all of the, insurances and maintenance on the vehicle and payroll and on and on and on and on, I didn't have enough money to pay myself a paycheck. And that was just the reality of it. But that's something that's very, very tough. If you're an entrepreneur, you have to be willing to do that. And so my recommendation is, if you're going to get out of the military and you want to be an entrepreneur, I say go for it. And of course, there's a lot of inherent risk with owning your own business. And I don't care what business it is that you're doing. There is a lot of inherent risk there. But if you got a family you need to support and you got bills to pay, things like that, start off doing 9 to 5 or working nights or even first shift, and find a way to carve out time in your own business. I mean, there's a lot of people, like, take, for example, Dan Evans, right? His 9 to 5 job is, a gunny in the Marine Corps, but he's got his side gig, which is a militarypreneur podcast and blog that he started. So, I mean, you don't have to wait till you get out of the Army. Or I say Army, you don't have to wait to get out of the military, regardless of what branch you're in, to start your own business. And you don't have to just have your own business to be an entrepreneur. You can definitely do, something on the side. So don't think that it's an all or nothing thing to call yourself an entrepreneur. That's just not the case.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up Dan Evans, because we were talking on the Military Entrepreneur Show just a little while ago about the idea of, like, let's say the essence of a company, especially within podcasting, content is king, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got to have really good content, and we thank our listeners for sharing our content that's out there. Subscribe, rate, review. Hey. But but the other thing also, especially from an entrepreneurial side of things, is culture is king. To steal from Peter F. Drucker, who is like, what? I love the guy. Anyhow, I'm a dork for that type of stuff. But I love company culture, and if I want to go to work and I want to be challenged every day and never live inside of my comfort zone and all of that other fun stuff, then I'll stick around, because I didn't join the United States Marine Corps for the money. Contrary to popular belief, $250 in hazard duty pay a month did not, entice me to go to war. But the idea, though, is that you have a great culture, right, in the Marine Corps. I mean, the best, in my opinion, no offense. But I love the brotherhood and all of that other stuff, and I'm sure you love your fraternal order as well. But then you also have what we signed up for and moving forward, and, it's challenging. It's outside of the comfort zone. I want to be able to offer that to my team as well.
Right.
Hey, Bennett, when was the last time you saw your comfort zone?
God. Dude, I've been out of my comfort zone literally daily since April of 2014.
There you go.
And then really out of my comfort zone from the time that we went to EBV on. So what, a year and a half of constant, literally stressing out every freaking day, because we've either got deadlines to do this, or I'm trying to get another guest, or I'm trying to, do this and fit this in, as a father and a breadwinner for my family. You speak the truth, brother. That's it. I mean, it can be hell on earth.
But what's the number one reason for quitting your job?
Oh,
it's not money.
No, it has nothing to do with money.
It's challenge.
It's literally the passion that I have to do what we do on a daily basis. Whether it's Cigars and Sea Stories, because I grab onto the shit and I just do it and I love it, or Warrior Hall, or what I do with the VA, or just literally pulling guys off the street and getting them housed.
You attack
way
me.
Better. Eddie understands, as being a former corrections officer, being in the nuclear industry, I almost pull it akin to that. It's very law enforcement wise, but literally I would go into the plant and patrol a nuclear facility from dawn to dusk, 12-hour days, and just locked up. Just horrible, man. Great pay, but at the end of the day, it wasn't my passion. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was sucking my soul. But now, since April 2014, needless to say again, I think Marty Skovlin put it well once in an article that I read that he wrote, is you truly know entrepreneurship when you have to think about filing for food stamps.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because you know, it gets that bad sometimes, and people don't get it until they've been there. But at the end of the day, it only makes you stronger. But it's about not being scared to follow the passion that you have. You'll make it. Your family will make you know, you'll be able to pay rent, you'll be able to freaking put food in your family's belly. At the end of the day, it all works out because you're on that path, man.
Right.
If your heart and your mind and your soul are there, you will make it. Period. Yeah. I firmly believe in all that, and a lot of people throw it back at me like, "Ooh, that's, you know, woo-wooey and you know, wilted flower child bullshit that you're throwing at me."
Yeah, right. No, that's getting pinned down in the middle of a firefight shit that you're throwing out there.
Right. What I'm saying is, you know what I'm saying is it's like, I love guys like Daryl Fusaro, and who's been on our show many, times, and we've been on, both Mike and I have been on his show. Most positive person I've ever met in my life. And he equates all of it, man, as just basically let go and just follow your passion and let it be. Just let it go. And that's what I did. So I know I just went on a hell of a rant, but at the end of the day, that's what I do. So
no, and it's something that I struggled with when I got out, and I'm sure, and talking with a lot of guys that I served with, they've experienced or have at one point experienced this as well. And that is, when you're in and you're serving, you talk about, Mike, you talk about team unity, the esprit de corps, and the camaraderie that you build with your team. But it's not that you get to hang out with your buddies and act a fool when you're out in the field that does that. What it is you all understand that there's something bigger than yourselves. You guys are in the shit, right? You're in the suck all together. So you're enduring something as a unit, as a team. But you're not just doing it here today. You're representing those that came before you, hundreds of years, right, of history that has preceded you, right? And it's those people that you are in the shadows of, that you're trying to live up to, and hope that you're training your guys to be able to carry that lineage forward. It's that embodiment of what the Marine Corps or the Army means to somebody. That you're a part of something that's bigger than you, and it means something, and there's just value there. And then now get out of the Army or you get out of the Marine Corps, and you're in this corporate job, you're just like, what's the bigger purpose? And it's like, oh, well, we're here to make money to keep the stakeholders happy. Okay. Who are the stakeholders? Well, like the 12 people on the board. As long as the 12 people on the board are happy, that's why we exist. And it's like, wait a minute, I'm here to make 12 people on a board that are already millionaires even richer and make sure that they're happy. I totally lost the sense of being a part of something that was meaningful, something that was bigger than myself. And I couldn't find that until I started my own thing. Because granted, it's, you start your own thing, you're not protecting the country and preserving the memory of those that preceded you. But you know what? It's yours. It's something that you've created with your own two hands. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into. It's something that you're giving back to whoever. I don't care if you're building candlesticks or some shit. It doesn't really matter what it is you're doing. But if you're providing value and purpose, and you're supporting your family, and you're doing it your way, then I think that's what a lot of people getting out of the military, they struggle with the corporate world for that reason. And talk about woo-woo, Bennett. That's probably the biggest woo-woo shit you've heard on this show. I don't know.
I am full blown fucking woo-wooey when it comes to, the whole kit and caboodle. I'm a big mindfulness guy and all that type of stuff. And a lot of people, especially in our culture, think about it, military culture, especially infantry or combat arms in general, they poo-poo the shit out of that stuff. The mindfulness. Like, I have so many guys on a daily basis in my alter ego as a peer support specialist. I have so many guys that poo-poo the shit out of the mindfulness. Or, I tell guys straight up, I meditate every fucking day. You know how I get through the day? Because guess what? I don't take medication.
Mm-hmm.
I have diagnosed PTSD. I have diagnosed anxiety. I have diagnosed depression. This isn't stuff that I talk about very much.
Mm-hmm.
I have diagnosed ADHD. I could be on a cocktail of 8 different meds. Trust me, my psychiatrist wants to put me on that shit. Okay? But at the end of the day, 3 things work for me: meditation, yoga, and melatonin. And I do meditation daily. Now I say yoga, but yoga and for me goes hand in hand with a morning routine where I kind of get up and I do a 20-minute routine where it involves yoga, but it also involves, thinking about what I'm going to do for the day and whatnot. And then I move on. But then at noon every day, I sit and I meditate, whether it's in the chapel, whether it's in my living room, whether it's in my vehicle sitting in a VA parking lot or whatnot. And that shit gets me through. And it's a skill that you have to embrace and then cultivate. And then I take melatonin and valerian root at night, which I found is very effective for me. So I don't have to take medications to help me sleep. I guess at the end of the day, they are medications, but at least it's not Ambien or some other kind of shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So people that shoot it down, I say, you know what? Don't fucking talk to me like that until you try that shit.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as you roll with it, you'll see. You'll fucking see, brother. Period.
Yeah.
That shit works. That shit works. And anyone who wants to learn what I'm talking about is you don't have to sit there for an hour. You don't have to sit there for 20 minutes and blank out your mind. Give me a freaking shout out at Bennett at cigarsandseastories.com and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Period. And then I shit you not, it'll change your life. Period.
See,
another rant. See, I went on another rant today. That's awesome.
Well, it's funny to me because you and I talk about a lot of these things, and I'm a very spiritual guy as well, but I get a little bit more hardcore. Like when I go out there and I attack the world, it's like a scene out of Mad Max, and I'm like, fucking witness me, and like fucking blowing shit up, you know what I mean? Like, let's do this. See, and it's funny because you and I have talked about this before, and Eddie, one of my biggest things is I love business planning from an operational mentality. I take enemy and I switch it out for market, and then I go out there and attack the shit out of it. And what I mean by this is the marketplace that's out there exists because somebody has a need for a service.
All you have to do is go to the
business.
Cigars and Sea Stories website and look at our mission. Look at our mission, and it's a 5-paragraph order. That's it. Run it.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason why it's like that, though, I'm going to be honest with you, is because I was trying to figure out how to get outside the building. I was trying to figure out, like, Mike, okay, you know how to do this, man. You've been on patrol before. Why are you stuck? Like, what is going on? And it's because I didn't have a plan. It's because I had the long-term, like, the battalion level perspective, you know what I mean? But not the nitty gritty into the individual patrol. You know, now what I'll do is I'll write out a quick frago, like on where we're going. Say the situation hasn't changed because I know who my higher adjacent supporting is, right, within my industry. Say the market hasn't changed. We know what the situation is, you know what I mean? But for that specific, let's say, networking event, you have a mission. You have a commander's intent and a desired end state. There's a center of gravity, a critical vulnerability, and here's my exploitation plan. Yeah. And that's how I'm going to make traction in this market, in this conversation. Yeah. I wrote a 5-paragraph order. I'm not going to bullshit you, and I hope Todd listens to this. The CEO of Bunker Labs, right? I needed to go and pitch the idea of doing this bunker bus tour, which is going to be just so much fun. And we put a lot of planning and thought and everything else in behind it. And I actually sat down earlier that morning and wrote out a warno. I wrote out a little goal mess, right, on what that pitch would look like and what the opportunities are going to look like and what the critical vulnerability is, you know, that could potentially be even in a conversation route. And needless to say, it turned out quite well. But the idea that
Needless to say.
Needless to say. But the idea, though, that gives me the confidence to go outside the wire. Like, I wasn't a maniac when I stepped outside the wire. I made condition 1, and I made sure that I understood everybody, when everybody on the patrol knew what was going to happen. At least from our planning perspective. First round comes down, range plan goes out the window. We all know that. Yeah. But we have secondary and tertiary. We've got we've got our pace plan. We've got our ability to be able to go, okay, if we take contact in this sector, this is how we're going to shoot, move, communicate in order to bump fire. And then, whatever, red star parachute, get fires on them, call for air, call for support, blah, blah, blah. But we have that mentality. So now you're alone in your house. Like, I moved to New England when I got out of the Marine Corps. I lived in Belmont, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston right there.
Okay, yep.
And I went to UMass Boston when I was going around, linking up with these different folks. And I met a lot of very awesome people who are CEOs of companies and self-starters and all of this other stuff. I was terrified of it. I was intimidated. That's why. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, why am I intimidated? I have a planning process that's been developed and honed over nearly, at that point, 240 years.
Right.
And now 240 years. Happy birthday, us. But
see, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But that's the confidence booster for me. That's the superpower that we got, is that we don't have a linear process to the effect of like Lean Sigma or something along those lines. We have playbooks. We have play cards that we can go to.
At the end of the day, too, a lot of guys now in the Marines and in reconnaissance, we learned how to write a op order early, just because we were trained to do our team leader's job, because who the hell knew what would happen? There's only 5 to 7 of us at any given moment out on,
Well, and I was in the infantry and learned how to write an op order 3 months into the fleet.
Right. So in the Army, I think I'm sitting here looking back on my Army time, and it's a little different. A lot of privates don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Right.
But what I'm rolling to here is that everyone knows what the fuck a salute report is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that's all at the end of the day. A business plan, or at least a rudimentary business plan, is a fucking salute report. So even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, I know you know what a salute report is. Pick it up and roll with that, and it'll at least get you pointed in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Seriously.
And I think military in general, former military veterans, whatever you want to call them, make good entrepreneurs, because I think you and Mike both hit some of the things that I think entrepreneurs can leverage, and that is succession planning, right? Succession plan. The military is largely vertical, right? And it was imperative that you understood how to do your, the person above you's job and the 2 levels below you job, right? And everybody was I can't say it. If you're in the military and listening to this right now, and you don't know your job, your immediate supervisor's job, and 2 levels below you, then you are in the wrong. You're wrong.
You're just
fucked
wrong.
Up. Fucking wrong. Yeah, you right. And it was my job as a senior squad leader to make sure that all my guys knew how to do my job, and 2 levels below them, and I had to make sure that I knew my platoon sergeant's job. And so on and forth, and that's how we executed. But it's the ability to adapt and overcome, because as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to shift, and you can't just ride one lane. What I mean by that is, if your strength as an entrepreneur is, let's say, in the the physical, let's say the operations part of the job, right? So you're doing the actual. Let's take Mike in C Stories, for example. So you guys probably have divvied up some responsibilities within your team. Mm-hmm. So you've got somebody that goes off and is, looking at the business strategy in terms of monetization and how to, figure that with sponsors and things like that. You got somebody else that's looking at the next, gig down the road in terms of exposure in marketing, things like that. And you got, who are you going to bring on? What type of value you're going to bring to the listener? There's so many things. But as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to shift and adjust and cover the other responsibilities within your team, instantly, just like in the military. And I think military people know or are trained how to do that so they can fill that role much easier. Another example that I have, I was a forward observer, fire support specialist, forward observer in the Army. So my job was, to get out in front. I was a brigade. I was on the brigade Colt team, combat observation lasing team. So we had the high-speed lasers that we would get out in front of the brigade, 3-man team. We would move our vehicles, our Humvee, as close as we dare, and then we would, unpack our shit and hump, the rest of the, 8-10 miles or whatever it is into position and get onto an observation point in order to observe the enemy, identify, the positions and what their makeup is, what direction they're traveling, all that good stuff, and report back to the brigade elements. And oftentimes our job was really that. It was more reconnaissance and reporting back, but on occasion we would, train. Obviously that's our job, is to train to call for fire. So we would call in close air support, which is, the fixed wing aircraft, the helicopters, the naval gunfire. We could call in that, artillery, whatever the case may be. And then, but what the primary missions of an FO, once they get on top of their OP, is to find a fallback OP or an alternate observer, right? You never have one OP. You always have your primary and you have a fallback or alternate OP. And as a business owner, you have to go into every situation and say to yourself, okay, this is my plan. Here's my primary OP or my primary position or way I'm going to attack it. However, if I meet resistance or some shit happens, I am going to then pivot and flex, and I'm going to move into my alternate OP. All of these things we're talking about is a business acumen that you've learned in the military. You just have to realize, you have to make the connection that shit that you learn in the military, you can apply to business and you can apply to the corporate world very, very easily. You just got to find that connection. Yeah,
Bennett had mentioned salute, so we're going off OP to OP and how you can, fallback position. My biggest thing is MET-TTSL, the whole
there we go.
thing.
Yeah, baby.
The whole Shazam.
Digging that shit out.
I guarantee there's somebody doing a massive eye roll. Don't swerve into oncoming traffic when I say MET-TTSL.
Hey, let me dust the fucking cobwebs off of that.
Right. There we go. All right.
Hey, don't make me pull out my Ranger fucking handbook.
There it is. Dude, I'm telling you, MET-TTSL is the greatest thing in the world because you do a quick analysis, that right there just kind of tells you us or them. And how we're going to make this shit happen without breaking it all the way down. Barney style by any means. Mission's pretty obvious. You got your statement in there, enemy, salute, and everything else. But what I love is the terrain and weather is what's going on in the marketplace. Is it, is it a red ocean, blue ocean? Is it rocky? What do we got going on? Truce and support's pretty obvious. Time, is your schedule, but then space is what you're looking at from that management perspective of like the duration. You're a project manager, go to your goddamn Gantt chart. You know what I mean?
Right.
What are we going to do here? And then the logistics is kind of obvious, but which I hate using the term obvious as an instructor, but how are we actually going to get the job done, fundamentally speaking? I throw myself into the visionary concept, side of the house or slot of the house. I know that a lot of the stuff that we conceptualize is not necessarily going to be a tangible reality in the immediate future.
Ain't that the fucking truth?
Right.
Well, I'm not going to go into it because I don't want to give away the idea. Because you never know what we can go into. I called Mike the other day in a fucking tizzy about some serious bullshit. It's like, but here's the fucked up part. It's literally, I guess all that I can say, and this will kind of key off people that know children's movies, people that have children, is all I have to say is the Lorax. I called him with this tizzy about the shit about guys selling a certain product to people in Beijing. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. You know what I mean? But I went off on this tangent for like an hour with Mike, and we're like drawing up freaking plans and how we're going to freaking invent this freaking apparatus. just to smoke weed a little better or something. Or some crazy shit like that.
It was like tangent. That is the curveball.
At the end of the day, that's what it's down to, is how can we market this product to people that smoke marijuana? And it's crazy because
I don't a marijuana product.
I don't smoke marijuana. I don't do it. But this sure as hell is a business product that somebody would buy that smokes marijuana.
The market's there. That's what it is.
That's the crazy shit. And I just popped it out of my freaking head. And him and I swear to God, we need to record every single conversation we have because it's fucking asinine.
Oh, but I've always got pen and paper.
Or we need to start a t-shirt company that just has freaking crazy ass statements on it. Because we'd be millionaires at this point.
Yeah, man.
Forget the military t-shirt stuff. That competitive, you got some guys there, Ranger Up, Article 15, Grunt Style. We can't even compete. But holy crap, the crazy ass freaking statement t-shirts, I think we would freaking rule the market.
Without sounding like a dork, I want one that has a long sleeve on the left and completely cut off at the shoulder on the right, because I'm pitching all day, baby. I'm pitching all day. There it is. Frag out. There it is.
Nice. I love it.
Oh, man. Eddie gets us a little bit, because him and I have had some conversations over the past few weeks that we're just freaking ignorance on fire. That's all there is at the end of the day.
That's right.
And it's about bottling the lightning, baby. Bottle the fucking lightning.
Hey there, Eddie Lazzari. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in Montana. I grew up in Nevada. Joined the Army right out of high school, and spent most of my time in Texas. And now I live in New England.
God be damned.
Yeah, kind of all over the place.
No, that's cool. Well, I only asked because I'm originally from Michigan, and I thought I caught a little bit of that accent. But, whatever. It could be the Montana. I don't know.
Yeah, probably maybe Montana. But I don't know. I moved away from Montana when I was like in 3rd grade or something. And 6th grade. Moved to Nevada in 6th grade, and then moved away from Nevada once I joined the Army and never went back.
Yeah.
And I've never, it's funny I say that. I was talking to a Navy chaplain, as a matter of fact, last week. Somebody that I'm gonna been talking about get on my show and interview. He's got a good story, and we were just talking about just life in general, different deployments and things. And he said something that it really kind of resonated with me. It was awesome. He said when he deployed, I can't remember where it was, to Iraq or Afghanistan or whatever, but anyway, he was on a ship. And the ship went to port, and it was a lot of I think it was sailors and Marines or whatever, a lot of their first deployments. And he got off the ship, and I think it was a young Marine, do you call them private or whatever, the E1s or whatever?
Yeah, privates.
Yeah, so he was walking with one of them, and he could tell, the chaplain could tell he was nervous. And I guess they walked down the gangplank or whatever that's called to get off the ship. And they started to walk away, and the private turned around and looked back at the ship. And the chaplain kind of pulled him back around. And he said, "Listen, the way home isn't on that ship. The way home is to move forward. You're not getting home by getting back on that ship. That's not how you get there." And it was something that I guess the Marine just kind of looked at him, nodded his head, and just kind of moved forward and never looked back after that. But I mean, it's so true in life. If you're going to do something, you gotta go for it all the way, and you gotta look forward, because you keep looking back to try to figure out how you're going to, was this the right decision? Should I have done this? You second guess yourself. I'm nervous. I'm scared. All of those feelings. You just got to put that shit away and just ruck up and look forward and move forward and just move on. It's not going to be always easy or pretty, and it's not going to all go your way, but you just learn how to, adjust and, shoot, move, and communicate. Just move to the next objective, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Mike. You've got to have a plan, right? Plans are everything.
Be 80% sure.
Exactly. You've got to at least know what direction you're going, right? And then after that, you just adjust. Every time we would go, when we were in Iraq, our primary mission was route reconnaissance, which a very blanketed term for every fucking thing under the sun, right? We did cordon and searches, snap checkpoints, vehicle searches. We helped with the first interim elections in Iraq.
Yeah.
We did.
I was there for that. This is
were
cool.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was in Ramadi in 05, 06. Yeah.
Okay, I was there 04, 05, March 04 to March 05.
There
So
you go. Yeah.
in Baghdad, it was awesome. And so we were responsible for an 8-mile stretch of road, but we did everything from, they gave us 500 frozen chickens to pass out to the local economy, and
Yeah.
all kinds of shit. We had some church group that was sending us 12 boxes of used shoes a week. So we were literally out there passing out used shoes of every style, size, make. It was just asinine crazy. We had deflated soccer balls that we'd hand out to kids, and they would look at us like, what the hell you want us to do with this? They're deflated, right? Because they have no way of like airing them up.
No problem.
And it was just stupid shit we would do. But I don't even know where I was going with this. It was just a funny story.
The nature of that game.
But so anyway, I was a senior
back.
Got it back. So I was a senior squad leader, so we would put together these op orders. So before we would roll out, I would go to the head shed and I would get basically a frag order, and it would be, we'd get the updated BOLO list of anything that we were supposed to be on the lookout for, and vehicles, people, what was going on in what area, all this shit, crazy stuff. And then, I'd go out and I'd brief my guys, all right, here's our mission, here's our task, here's what we're doing. And as soon as you leave the gate, as soon as you leave the fob, and it didn't matter, anything and everything would just completely throw your plan off. However, we always knew what direction we were going. We knew what the end state or the final objective was, and we did everything we could to continue to fight towards that objective. And we did that, every single mission. And that's important. If you're starting your own business, have an objective. It may not always, you may not find yourself on objective the way you thought you would, but as long as you're fighting towards that, then you're going to succeed, and just don't give up.
Cigars and Sea Stories is proud to support and sling Counter-Strike Coffee. Counter-Strike Coffee, I want you to know, is meant to be drink black. Now, I myself love coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. I went away from black coffee for a little while. Needed the cream and sugar when I was rocking it with the generic blend. Counter-Strike Coffee brought me back into the fold in a huge, huge way. They do a great dark roast. I'm a big fan of napalm. That's my fave. Smooth operator is good, though. It can go with cakes and pies, and I got a bit of a sweet tooth. I know a couple of us do, And then also Firewatch. Firewatch, that's going to be the kick in the ass that you need in order to get your day going the right way. You know what I'm saying? If you haven't already done so, check out counterstrikecoffee.com. Use promo code CIGARSandC. You will get 10% off. Again, that's counterstrikecoffee.com. Use promo code CIGARSandC to get yourself 10% off.
Here's a Marine story for you. So we're keeping in time with our cigars.
Actually, I was going to ask you about it, but go right ahead.
Yeah, well, I've got
you're fulfilling my question.
All right. So I got two Marine stories real quick. So the first story. So I had very little, let's say, contact with any Marines while I was over there. They pretty much kind of kept to their own little AO, which was fine with us. But not saying that I didn't like Marines, but everybody's got different sectors
jobs.
And different. Yeah, it's a different job. And so they stayed and did their thing in their little AO. We did our thing in our AO. So it was perfectly fine. We had this one guy in our unit. He was a former Marine. Well, I can't say that. He was a Marine infantryman, and much like you, Bennett, he did a time in the Marine Corps as an infantryman, and then got out for whatever reason, and came back into the Army as a medic. So he was a combat medic in the Army. And of course, I don't know about Marines, but in the Army, the combat medics were only allowed to carry a 9mm sidearm.
Right.
Because they weren't allowed to, according to Geneva Convention.
Non-combatives.
Right. So they weren't allowed to actively engage the enemy. So their 9mm was really solely for the purpose of
self-defense,
self-preservation. Right. Him and his section were out at a bridge south. I want to say it was southeast of Baghdad-ish area, and there was a narrow bridge. It was wide enough for like one lane of traffic, but there was so much traffic trying to go both directions. So they had a military kind of presence down at this bridge, kind of help directing traffic, over back and forth each direction. And so there was not only a lot of vehicular traffic across the bridge, but there was a lot of foot traffic as well. And this guy, I forget his name now, but he was on one side of the bridge, and he was on foot with a bunch of his other guys, and there were some vehicles around and whatnot. But this Iraqi dude walked up to him. So this dude he yelled Allah Akbar, and as he was yelling it, he grabbed this medic's OTV and pulled it out and tried to stuff a hand grenade down into his OTV.
Oh no!
And he looked down and he saw this. And now picture this in your head, right? Now the average time delay on a hand grenade is what, 3 seconds ish?
Yeah, 2 to 3.
About there. So all of this happened within this delay period. I'll call him this Marine turned Army combat medic, saw this. He batted the hand grenade down. It landed on the ground. He kicked it down the embankment of the bridge, pulled out his 9mm, shot the dude in the face twice, yelled grenade, and ducked, and all of his guys ducked, and then the grenade went off. So all that happened. Now picture this. In 2 to 3 seconds, batted the grenade, kicked it out of the way, shot the dude in the face twice, yelled grenade, ducked, and then it blew up. What? Now that's
wow.
That's training.
That's training. Yeah.
God damn it. Oh.
And he came
Excuse
back
my
after-
boner while you tell this sea story. Shoots a guy in the face twice.
I got with him. I was like, why twice? And he says, why not?
Fuck yes. Yes. America. That's why, motherfucker. Yes.
Merv.
I love that.
Yeah. So.
Good
yeah,
shit, Doc.
He got an award for that, but he goes, my
Good shit, Doc.
Yeah, he got an award for that, and I was like, wow, that congratulations. He goes, I didn't need the award. He goes, my award was putting 2 rounds in the brain pan of that son of a bitch. And
Hell
I'm like,
yes.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
Hell yes. Dude, that if I had that shit as like a fucking GIF or something like that, it would just say epic fail. That's it. Like poof, pop, grenade. Yes.
So after that, anytime anybody saw him, like he kind of took on a new nickname. Every time you saw him, you would just say, "What's up?" 2 in the face. That's it.
Yes.
You just called him 2 in the face. That was it.
Yes. Oh God. I knew a chick we called 2 in the face. It wasn't because of that. It was.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to know that.
Is that a little fucked up? That's a little fucked up.
The other story, our other interactions with Marines wasn't a good one. We were like I said, we were responsible for that 8-mile stretch of road. And of course, you got to remember now, this was 04, 05. So we were still, when I say we, the United States forces of all branches were still new at learning how to maneuver and navigate through other people's AOs, right? Nowadays, I think they've kind of figured out, how to establish whose operational space it is, how to communicate, that you're entering and exiting, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But at the time, that was something that was still not very well done.
Right.
There were so many forces in the area, not just military, U.S. military, but
PMCs.
Coalition forces of all different countries were just going through the area. And we had this Marine, it was a Marine Reserve convoy, and there was only 2 trucks. And our rules of engagement were our SOP in our area was we were not allowed to roll outside the FOB with anything less than 3 vehicles. And so these 2 Humvees.
That's part of the course for the Army and Marine. I'll explain in a little bit.
Okay, so we had these 2 2 Humvees roll through, and I think there was 4 in one truck, 5 in another, I think.
Yeah.
And they rolled down through
Split
our AO.
section.
Yeah, but they didn't know that they were supposed to communicate that they were there. So they rolled through our AO. We didn't know they were there, and it was hot. It was fucking hot. I mean, in Iraq, it's like 130 degrees in the shade and shit, and you got these ballistic doors and these 6-inch thick little tiny square windows and shit that you're trying to look out. But anyway, so it was hot, and the TC, the truck commander of the first vehicle, he had his his TC door propped open, and he had it propped open with his foot as they were cruising down our MSR that we were responsible for. Oh, and it was the only door that was open, and he drove by a watermelon stand, and there was a ball bearing IED that was placed probably 3.5 feet off the ground behind the watermelon stand. And as the truck drove by, the IED went off, and all of the ball bearings were concentrated through the DC door.
So bad.
Yeah, and of course, all of the doors on the inside were all that ballistic metal, so all the ball bearings literally just ricocheted around inside the truck. And the TC was killed, the driver was killed, drove off the road. The gunner basically took ball bearings through both of his legs and was bleeding out. The only person that lived in that truck was the guy sitting behind the driver. He sustained some injuries, but he lived. The gunner would have lived if there was
tourniquets.
Yeah, if there were tourniquets, and there was, because what ended up happening was the second truck that was behind them, they got out and they were spending all their time treating the driver and TC, and they didn't realize the severity of the wounds of the gunner, and the gunner ended up bleeding out and died. So three of them died, and it was, like I said, those are my two Marine stories. One of them was an awesome shoot him in the face story, and the other one was an unfortunate case of losing some Marines in combat. Yeah. But it was, it was a shitty circumstance, and it could have been any one of us. But it's a sad day. What was weird about that was there was a local, I don't know if it was a reporter or somebody, some local national was on scene. Taking pictures, and I went home and had a chance to call my wife and talk to her for a little bit, and of course, I mean, anybody that I know that was over there didn't divulge a lot of the shitty stuff that happened, just because we didn't want to worry our family, and that shit had happened that day. It was still on my mind, and of course I wasn't going to say anything to her, and she says, what happened today? And I'm like, oh, nothing, typical. We're just out on the route. And she goes, bullshit, what happened today? And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, there's pictures of you standing next to a blown up pump all over the internet. I'm like, are you kidding me? And she's like, no. And I went and I looked, and like the front page of Yahoo is big.
Oh my God.
No.
Yeah, front page of Yahoo. There I am standing there right next to the truck that's just completely bloody and shit. And they had pulled the bodies out at the time and had them kind of covered up. But I mean, I couldn't believe that they had posted that shit everywhere. But
Jesus, dude. Yeah, we were lucky with that. In regard to when we were there 0506, it was one of those times where they kept trying to get in, but it was also just too fucking dangerous. We could not have reporters running around that city in 0506. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy because I was there when that famous picture of the Marine, I think he was a gunnery sergeant at the time, but he's got his trousers dropped and he's flipping off Ramadi. That was like near the flight line over there near Camp Ramadi and stuff. So a lot of dude, but I remember, I don't want to say that we saw you, but I remember thinking to myself when we were overseas, I was like, fuck man, whatever happens, I just really hope that we don't see any of those images until after we get home. Mm-hmm, so I can't imagine what it's like being in country.
No shit.
On River City, and the old lady's like, yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Jesus. That's nuts, dude.
Yeah, and she was pissed off. She's like, so what else don't you tell me? I'm like, to be honest with you,
everything.
There's a lot of shit that, because you
fucking everything.
Yeah, because you can't.
You know what? My wife and I, we had a conversation like that before, and I was like, are we really doing this? Like,
Yeah.
is this,
Yeah.
do you really want to know what a Marine Corps infantryman sees
Yeah.
on 3 combat tour? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you
Yep.
probably don't. Like, there's a reason why we do what we do for a living.
Yeah.
And
You know
and we
what I
shut
mean?
the fuck up about it at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, I mean, we might talk about, oh, well, yeah, we're a little fucked up here. We've got this shit and that shit and that shit. But very rarely, other than to each other, do we talk about specifics.
Mhm. Right.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing also about what this is. That's why Cigars and Sea Stories exists. I know exactly what the fuck you are talking about when you tell me that story. I have seen, lived through, been a part of that exact type of scenario.
Right.
Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, it doesn't
Right.
matter.
Yeah.
We've all seen that shit.
Yeah,
Right.
we all bleed red, man.
Right. And so now, 2 in the face.
Red,
I would
white.
love
Red,
to
white.
see that. I
Red,
would
white.
love to see that. See, that's why you do the job.
Yep. Yep. And somebody asked me one time, they're like, man, I came back from deployment, and they're like, man, I don't know how you do that. When you're out there and you're faced with that, how do you rise to the occasion? And it took me back for a minute, and the only way I could answer that, I was like, there's no way anyone can rise to the occasion. You only drop to your level of training. That's it.
There you go.
And if you're trained well, that's how you're going to perform. If you're trained poorly, that's it. Because when bullets, there's been times where we've been in firefights or I've gone through an IED explosion, and it seems like time just stands still. Like everything just closes in on itself. Everything just turns into this tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And it
You're
seems
in the
like
groove.
yeah, it's just, and then all of
yeah.
a sudden it's over, and you're like, holy shit, it's over. I look at my driver, and he goes, holy shit, I'm black on ammo, and I'm like, what? I was like, you mean you're jammed? He goes, no, I'm black on ammo. I said, you mean you need to change out your mag? He goes, I fucking shot all my rounds. I'm black. I'm like, holy shit, because we're not carrying the combat load 7 rounds. You know what I mean? We got like 16, 17 mags a person.
Holy shit.
And we're sitting there like black on ammo. I'm like, holy shit, man. I was like, we weren't conserving any ammo, but when you're in that firefight, it's just...
The shit goes down range, homie.
It does.
Oh, dude.
It goes down range, man. Quicker than shit.
I've been blessed with getting some in the glass before, and anytime I prone out into my rifle now, and being a marksmanship instructor in the Marine Corps definitely helps. This is how I meditate. Marksmanship, pistol marksmanship, rifle marksmanship, getting in the glass, whatever. But it's that zone.
Yeah.
You're back in the flow. You throw the bolt home, you ease down into it, you're just like, whew, and time stands still. You clear the mechanism. Every once in a while, that's the shit you miss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that's the shit.
Hell yeah.
Hey, well, actually, there's a pretty good video of Michael on Facebook as of late shooting some fucking bottles upside down in between his legs with a fucking pistol. So
nice.
go check that shit out, America. That shit's funny as shit.
Well, somebody was like, you can't honestly hit anything like that. I'm like, okay, I'll make a video then.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, hey, at the end of the day, Eddie Lazzari,
Yes.
give us all your stuff here. Give
All
us
right.
your website, your contact info.
All right. So you can find me at changeyourpov.com. I got all kinds of good stuff on there. You can check out my...
It is good stuff, I have to admit.
Yeah, and I'm building more and more content as we go. And I got a podcast that Bennett, you're also on at Change Your POV podcast. It's available on iTunes, Stitcher, and your podcast player of choice. Check that out. You can email me directly at eddie@changeyourpov.com if you want to hit me up. Also, just for the Cigars and Sea Stories listeners, I've put together a package just for you. You can go to changeyourpov.com/cigars. And I will explain once you go there what you get, but I'm going to provide you with a free download, PDF download of a military separation checklist that you can utilize. I also have a 10 winning tips for generating the perfect bullet statement for your resume that you can also pick up for free. And also, if you want to go to the bottom of that page, and leave a comment and tell me who you are and why you are the best person for me to help you navigate your resume. 2 weeks after this episode airs on Cigars and Sea Stories, I will select one person out of whoever responds, and I will sit down with you on one-on-one and help you develop your resume, your cover letter. I will talk about interviewing, your skills, any questions you may have that you want answered. I will even help you apply for and submit a resume to a job board and help you coach you through that whole process. So if you want to take advantage of that, it's all free of charge. Again, you can find that at changeyourpov.com/cigars. Hey, thanks guys for having me on. It's been fun.
Fantastic.
Hey, folks, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Player FM. You guys are awesome. Continue to share. Please hit that share button. And we're looking to get bumped up in the new and noteworthy over there on iTunes. I know that we have got some serious fan favorites on there. If you would, please give us a comment. Tell us how we can do better and stuff like that. Tell us why Eddie Lazzari is so freaking awesome.
We mean it. Fucking tell us how we can do better.
That's right.
There you go. Did I hear a hooah? Heard, understood, acknowledged.
Hey, at the end of the day, listenership, our goal is to empower veterans and to achieve greatness. Let's do this shit.
Add value to every situation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Lazzari, thank you so much. Bennett Tanton, always a pleasure. My fellow partner in crime.
Brother from another mother.
Hell yes. You guys keep listening. And Jocelyn, you're not here right now, but you should probably cue the music.